All right, today we are going to be exiting the void. We entered the void a couple of classes ago. Today we're exiting it. So we're going to do a very brief recap of methods, what we've been talking about for the past couple of classes. We've got 4 parts to our signature. We've got our access specifier, return type, method name, and our parameter list. The parameter list is what we talked about last class when we were adding parameters to the methods we wrote. Today, we are going to be focusing on the return type of our methods. So let's do a brief comparison. If I say string word equals input.nextLine, do we expect this to work? Given what we know about nextLine, will this line of code work? Yeah, that line of code should work just fine because we're expecting nextLine to give us some string value. What about this line? If I say int area equals myrex.printArea, what do we think will happen here?
It's an error. Isn't print area just end up supposed to being a different print function?
Exactly. So print area is just there to print something. It has a void return type. So you're absolutely correct. We will get an error. It'll say incompatible types. Void cannot be converted to int. So we were absolutely correct. Input.nextLine, that will give us a string to work with, so we can save it into a string. But print area has a void return type, so we don't have a value to put into our area. If we look at our signatures for those 2 methods, we would have public string nextLine and public void print area. So with a void method, I cannot save its value into a variable. So today we're going to talk about non-void methods. So the return type of a method will determine what type of value that method is going to spit out when you call it. So we can make our methods return a value by using the return keyword inside of them. So here's our public void print area, how we've been using it. We've got our area calculation, and then we're printing it. If I want to change this to return the area instead, I might make it called get area instead of print area, so that it's going to return the area out of this method. The area is an integer typed value, so I'm going to say public int get area. It's still going to calculate my area just like before, and then instead of printing area, I'm going to return my area. So we've got 2 places where we've made a change. We've got our return type being changed, and we're adding that return keyword and the value we want to hand back, the value we want to pass out of our function method words. So does someone have a question? So the application of the print area method is pretty limited. All it can do is print out the value of the area. It can't do anything beyond that. Where our get area method has a lot more various applications, since we can use the value of the area from this method once it's been returned. We can print it out in our main method. We can do some calculations with it out in the main method. There's any variety of different things that we could do using the area out in our main method when it's not just being printed from this method. Does that make sense? This lets us send information back out of our methods rather than just having it all be contained inside of our methods. So let's take a look at how this looks in practice. So when I have a method with a non-void return type, the value that it returns can be used anytime you would call a method. So if I make my rect, that way we've been making our rectangles, I can make a variable int area equaling my rect dot get area. So this area variable will equal whatever the area of the rectangle I created is. Or I can just use my rect dot get area directly in some expression. I can print it directly. I can do some math with it. I can do whatever I like with my method because it will return some value for me to do calculations with. Does that make sense? All right. So let's look at roughly how this is going to work. We're going to do a line-by-line analysis here. So we've got our rectangle myRect. When I create my object, right now it's got a null value in its box because I didn't initialize it yet. On my next line, when I do initialize it, I'm going to make that rectangle object. It's got a width, it's got a height. myRect is now referencing that object in my memory. Got a width of 6, height of 10. There we go. When I call my int area equals myRect.getArea, we're going to make the box for our area variable, and then we're going to call our getArea method. So we're going to jump over here into our other class, into our getArea method. We're going to say our int area, we're going to make another variable, equals width times height. We're going to pull from myRect because that's the object we are using for our getArea method. So we're going to use the width of 6, height of 10, 6 times 10, area is going to be 60. And then when I return area, the value in this box is going to get placed into my area box out here because I'm returning whatever value was in here. And out here, I've assigned the value that is returned to my area variable. And then when I system.out.println area, I will see 60. Does this process make sense? How I can get values out of my methods? Yes, no? Cool. All right, I'll take your silence as a resounding, we fully understand.
I have a question.
You have a question? All right.
So would the code on the right go in go with the instance variables and the constructors?
Yes, so this is going to be a method within our rectangle class, and this code is going to be out in our main method.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, great question.
Wait, just to clarify, which one comes first?
Which one comes first?
Yeah.
So the code that is in your main method is going to get run initially, and then anytime you call something from your rectangle method, that it'll jump into the rectangle method and run it.
Okay.
Also a good question. Thank you. All right, so if we look here, I have two variables named area, right? It is important to note that these two variables are not the same variable. Even though they have the same name, they are not the same variable. And we can kind of tell because we have a declaration for both. We have our int area and our int area, and there wasn't an error. So the reason for this is a topic called scope, which is going to define where a variable exists. And we're going to talk more about scope in the future, but for right now, just be aware scope exists, and it make sure that even if we have variables with the same name, if they're in different classes, they're never going to touch each other. If we look back at our example here, I have two separate boxes, both named area, but they're in different areas of my overall program. So they're never going to interact with each other other than when I returned this value and assigned it to this variable. We can really see this in this example. If I make an int area equal 12, I've got my area box here. I've got my same rectangle. And I make area 2 equal myRect.getArea. So my area over here is still going to equal 60. I'm going to save this value and assign it to area 2. So this area 2 is 60. This area is 12. And this area is 60. Since these two, like the division here is between different classes, within this class, within the my program class, my area box is going to equal 12, and any changes that happen in the rectangle class, this area is not going to affect this area. They're completely separate. So there we have that. Just be aware of that scope exists, and that's how it works. Just like any other time we have been working with data, the return type that we put in our signature needs to match the type of the data that is actually being returned. Otherwise, you'll get an error. So if I try to return an int when I have said I'm going to return a string, Java is going to say, hey, you can't turn an int into a string. That doesn't work. So just always remember your types need to match just about any time we make a variable or a method. We're going to have stuff match. So let's do a bit of a practice problem. Let's see if we can figure out how to do this together. Let's say I have a bunch of 13 by 7 desks, and I have a big 200 by 114 room. What steps do I need to take to find how many desks can fit into that room? And we're going for the very simple answer here. It does not have to be super complicated.
Well, you would first find the amount of desks you can fit in, or like how many desks you can fit horizontally, and then how many desks you can fit vertically.
All right, so that is the more complex solution. For right now, let's just worry about the areas. My wife, when I gave her this presentation, said that the answer we get is not technically correct. Your method would give us the correct answer. For right now, we're just going to work with the areas. So our first two steps are going to be find the area of desk and area of room, right? Once I have found those two values, what can I do?
Divide.
I can divide them. So if I divide the area of the room by the area of a desk, then I'll find how many desks I can place. And after I've found that number, I can print it. So there's our 4 steps. So let's go step by step and build the code to do that. So step 1, finding the total area of the room. We can do that by making a rectangle with these dimensions. And we can make a variable to equal what the get area of that rectangle equals. So I can make a rectangle called room with those dimensions. And if I call room.getArea and save that into a variable called a room area, boom, there we go. We have our area of our room. By the way, that is 22,800. It's a very big room. It's a 22,800 square units. Who knows what units though? All right, if we're finding the area of one desk, we're going to do the exact same thing except with these dimensions instead of the big ones. So we're going to make a rectangle for our desk. We're going to use the 13 and the 7. When we call our get area, we're going to save that into our desk area. It's going to give us 91. Now, if I open up a calculator, grab my phone. If I open my calculator and say 22,800 divided by 91, the answer I get is 250.54945054. So when I divide the area of the room by the area of a desk, what value is going to be stored? What value am I going to get out of that division? I see Allison mouthing the right answer. And the answer is, I'm just going to get 250 because since my room area and desk area are both integers, we're going to truncate any decimal places. And we kind of want to do that anyway because we don't want to have to saw a desk into 0.494 of a desk because we don't want to try and fit a fraction of a desk into our room. There'll just be a little bit of empty space. So our number of desks is going to be our room area over our desk area, which is going to be 250 because we're just going to truncate all those decimal places. And then when we print out the number of desks, that's easy. Just num.print line num desks. Now, my wife did the actual math yesterday, and apparently the correct number of desks that you can fit is 240 if you calculate how many can go in the, like how many times 13 goes into 200 or into 114, and how many 7 goes into 200 and 114. But like, that was way more math than we wanted to do right now. So you don't have to worry about that. We were just working with the methods that we defined today. So if you would like to make a program to figure out how many desks can actually fit, go for it, but you do not have to. But yeah, that is our lesson for today. I'll get stuff over. Any last queries about what we talked about?